Alright, howdy gangsters. Today we are going to make a backup of a WordPress website that's hosted somewhere on a server. Could be with GoDaddy, could be with Crazy Domains or any other hosting provider or web server provider. You might be doing this to just save some time instead of going into your file manager, logging into your host, zipping up all your files, getting your database, so on and so forth. You could also be, perhaps you're a junior admin who just wants to do things a little bit more efficiently, or someone who just wants to play around on the command line a little more. So we're going to be doing this on our Windows 11 machine, and we're going to be using the SSH or Secure Shell Protocol in order to back up the site and then download it onto our local PC. A few things you're going to need to be able to perform this operation. Firstly, you're going to need the IP address or URL of your website. You'll need the username of your hosting account or cPanel or SSH username, whichever way you go about it. You'll need the password, and in order to make a copy and copy it back, you'll also and in order to make a copy of your database, you'll need your database name, database user, and database password. But if you're not familiar with WordPress installs, I can show you an easy way on how to find those. So first thing we're going to do, we're going to open our trusty command prompt by typing cmd. Open up the command prompt. Okay, first thing we're going to do is we're going to use the SSH command. Now, first thing I need to do is just type in SSH and press enter. If you can see a response here regarding usage, then it means you've got an SSH client installed. If it says something like command not recognized, then you may need to install an SSH client, which is very simple. You can just do that by going to the start button, typing optional features, and you should see it here if you have it. Most Windows installations have it by default now, I believe, but if not, you can just add it there. It only takes about 2 minutes, and then you'll have access to the SSH command. So first thing we're going to do, we're going to go SSH. My user is Alan at 192.168.50.35, but you might have something like this, mywebsite.com.au. Either way, doesn't really make too much difference. Oops, 50.35. Okay, it's going to ask for your password. Alright, simple as that. You're now remotely in your web server. As you can see, it defaulted to the var/www folder. If we use the ls command, that's the list command, it will show what is available in this folder. And as you can see, public HTML. With most installations, I may be saying something here that you already know, but just to cover everybody, public HTML will be where your website files are. So in a WordPress installation, you'll cd change directory into public_HTML and typing the list command will then bring up your website files. And as you can see, this is clearly a WordPress installation. We've got wp config, index.php, etc, etc, etc. The first thing to do is we're going to archive and make a zip file of the entire public_HTML folder. So change directory, we'll go back one. Now the command we're going to use to make a zip of the entire folder is going to be sudo. You may or may not have to enter sudo, but if it doesn't work, try sudo. Sudo zip -r for recursive. We're going to call it website backup.zip, and we want to zip the public HTML folder. Press enter. Let's enter that password again, and you see a bada bing, a bada boom. There we have it. Website backup.zip. In order to do the SQL database, just one simple command to do that. If you don't know your database name, database password, or database username in WordPress installations, you can see that by viewing the wp-config file. So if we change directory into public HTML, we can list our files. You'll see wp-config.php. Let's read it. So we'll use the cat command, wp-config php, and it'll show us the contents of that file in the terminal. Scroll up. This is the area we're looking for. So in WordPress, you'll see database name, database user, database password. Now, this information is very, 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 very sensitive, so don't give this out to anyone else. It's just going to be used in this case to download the database or dump the database. The command we're going to use to dump the MySQL database. Firstly, we're going to change directory. I'm going to go back one, ... I think it's just a nice place to put the SQL file once it's downloaded. The command we're going to type is this: MySQL dump -u for user. You can scroll up and grab your username if you don't know it. For the database, it's different to the username that you used to connect to the web server using SSH. Sorry, the username is here. So Alan_user. We're going to go -p, which is going to ask us for our password once we submit this command. And then we're just going to put the database name, which in this case is database1. And we're going to use this funky little symbol, which is to tell the server that we want it to download and write the contents to this file, which we will call SQL backup.sql. You can call that whatever you like. Now, once we press enter on this command, it's going to ask us for our password again, and save the file into that www directory. Okay, in order to copy the file, first of all, exit out of the SSH session just by typing exit. And it should bring you back to a standard command prompt with Windows. Drop a CLS in there. That's going to clear the screen real nice, make it look real neat. The command we're going to type to grab those files and put them on our local computer is the secure copy command. So that's scp username at IP address, okay, location. In this case, it was var www SQL backup.sql, and where are we going to save it? On the Windows computer, we'll save it to C users, user documents, and we'll call it the same. Password, and the bada bing, a bada boom, you've got it. So if you go into your documents, you'll see the SQL backup there. And we're basically going to do the exact same thing, but with the public HTML zip file that we made earlier. So it'll be public_html.zip this time, and we're going to call it the website.zip. Put in the password again. No directory. Is that right? Let's have a squish. Public_html.zip. That's probably because that's not what we called it. What did we call it? Let's have a look. We called it website backup.zip. So I'm going to grab that. We'll exit. We'll go SCP Allen at IP address. Bar www website backup zip, and we'll save it here. Enter your password, and a bada bing, a bada boom, you can exit. So if we jump in our documents now, you will see we have our backup, database backup, and we've also got all of our website files as well. Now, as usual, I would be remiss if I didn't mention a few recommendations security-wise, given my background. So, when it comes to doing things over SSH, I won't get too much into it, but a few key notes would be when you are setting up that SSH server on the hosting side. Ensure that instead of using password-based authentication like we did in the example, in reality it would be much wiser to use public key infrastructure, so a public and private key type authentication, which would give you a private key that only you have access to. Would have a name such as ID_RSA, for those who are already aware of that. Basically what you would do, the only difference in command would be you would go SSH, let's pretend it was the same, but rather than just pressing enter and asking for a password, it would give us an error saying that you need to submit a private key. So in order to actually import a private key, if you had that on your computer, you would use -I, and maybe it was sitting in a folder called user documents keys, wherever you kept it, and it would very likely have a name of ID_RSA, but it can have a different name. Using that command would actually import the private key and connect you via SSH that way, and then you can continue on as we did in the guide. That's just one thing in terms of running things securely. There's a whole bunch of other stuff about setting up the SSH server securely, but generally speaking, you'd want to be running on public-private authentication, on key-based authentication, as opposed to just a simple password. You'd also have the option to put a passphrase on that private key, so it would be, you'd use the SSH command, you'd import your private key into the session. It would then ask for a private key passphrase, which only you would then know. You'd put the passphrase in, so you've kind of got two different steps of authentication there. A third step, you could even set up SSH using two-factor authentication. So using something like an authenticator app, so on and so forth. You could have three steps. Private public key infrastructure, a passphrase to use the private key, and two-factor authentication as well.